Every building fights gravity, but a rare few are built against something far less patient: water. Gravity pulls in one direction, forever, predictably. Water pushes from every direction at once. It never tires, and it rises to meet you. I'm an architect, and the biggest things we've ever built to deal with water are some of the most extreme structures on the planet. Because here, the water sets the terms. There are only 3 things you can do with water at this scale. We've gone to staggering lengths to do all 3. Make power from it. Keep it out. Flush it away. 3 fights with water at the largest scale ever built. Here's how to think about it like a designer. Water at scale is either a resource you harvest, a force you resist, or a volume you have to move fast. Harvest it, and you build the largest power machines on Earth. Resist it, and you build walls that have to win every single storm forever. Move it, and you build tunnels bigger than subway lines just to carry rain. And watch for the trick that runs through all of it. The word biggest keeps quietly choosing which number it wants to win on. Let's start with the most famous fight of all. What's the biggest power plant in the world? Almost everyone says China's Three Gorges Dam, and by one measure, they're right. Its installed capacity is about 22,500 megawatts, far ahead of Brazil and Paraguay's Itaipu at around 14,000. But capacity is just the size of the tap. It's the maximum if everything runs flat out. What actually matters is output, how much electricity really flows over a year. And here's the twist. For years, Itaipu, the smaller one, generated more than Three Gorges. A steadier river simply kept its turbines fuller more of the time. So which is biggest? By capacity, Three Gorges. By the electricity actually delivered, it was Itaipu for years. Same dam size question, 2 different champions, depending on whether you measure the tap or the flow. There's a second way to make power with water, and it's secretly the biggest battery on Earth. Not a chemical battery. 2 lakes, one stacked high above the other. When the grid has electricity to spare, you spend it pumping water uphill into the top reservoir. You've stored that energy as nothing more exotic than water, sitting higher than it was. Then, when demand spikes, you let it fall back down through the turbines, and it pours the power back into the grid in minutes. The largest is China's Fengming Station, north of Beijing. 12 units, 3,600 megawatts, just past America's Bath County, the old champion, at 3,000. Here's the architect's read. A plant like this makes almost nothing on its own. It's a round trip, and you always get back a little less than you put in. So why build the biggest one on the planet? Because the grid doesn't need more power at 3 in the morning. It needs it at 6 in the evening, the moment a whole country gets home. This isn't a power plant. It's a giant water clock for electricity, and the biggest one wins on how fast it can answer, not how much it makes. Now the opposite job, keeping water out. On the Dutch coast sits the Oosterscheldekering, the crown of the Delta works. And it does something beautifully counterintuitive. Most of the time, it stays open. The Dutch could have built a solid dam. Instead, they built a barrier of 65 concrete pillars, each around 18,000 tons, with 62 steel gates that normally hang open, so the tides and the sea life behind it keep flowing. Only when a storm surge threatens do the gates drop and the wall becomes solid. And the honest framing. It's not the longest sea barrier, others are longer. It's the most significant, a wall that wins the worst day of the century, and on every other day, politely gets out of the water's way. The Dutch let their gates hang open above the water. Venice did the exact opposite. It hid its gates on the bottom of the sea. Venice floods because the whole city is slowly sinking into its lagoon. So under the 3 inlets that join that lagoon to the Adriatic, engineers laid 78 hollow steel gates, flat on the seabed, full of water, completely invisible. When a dangerous tide is forecast, they blow compressed air into the gates. The water inside is forced out, The gates fill with air, and one by one they swing up off the seabed on huge hinges, rising out of the sea to form a temporary wall across the mouth of the lagoon. When the surge passes, they flood again and sink back down, out of sight. And the honest framing is the same as the Dutch wall. Moes isn't a dam. It's a barrier that spends almost its entire life lying down, doing nothing, on purpose. Its whole job is to be invisible until the one tide that would drown a 1,000-year-old city. A wall that only exists when it absolutely has to. Third fight, when the water's already falling on you, fast. Kuala Lumpur floods, hard suddenly. So underneath the city, they bored one enormous tunnel, about 13.2 meters across, and gave it 2 jobs. Most days, it's a motorway, cars driving through a tunnel like any other. But when a storm dumps too much water on the city, the road can be closed and the tunnel handed over to the flood. Stormwater roars through the same bore that carried traffic an hour earlier. One of the most expensive tunnels ever built, and its real purpose is to be empty of cars exactly when the city needs it most. An architect's dream and nightmare in one section. A single space doing 2 completely opposite jobs, and never both at once. Kuala Lumpur sends its flood through a tunnel. Tokyo built it a temple. Beneath the suburbs north of the city is a space people call the underground cathedral. One concrete tank, 177 meters long, 78 wide. Its roof held up by 59 pillars, each 500 tons, standing in rows like a sunken Greek temple. But it isn't a temple. It's the calm end of a machine. When Tokyo's rivers threaten to spill, water pours into 5 silos, each tall enough to swallow the Statue of Liberty, races through 4 kilometers of tunnel, and arrives, at last, in this enormous hall. Then 78 pumps fire with the force of jet engines and hurl up to 200 tons of water every second into a river big enough to carry it off. The architect's point. Almost no one is ever meant to see this room. Its beauty is an accident of engineering. Those pillars aren't grand. They're simply what it takes to stop the ceiling and the city sitting on top of it from caving in. The most cathedral-like space in Tokyo was built for water nobody wants. 3 structures, 1 adversary. Harvest the water, resist the water, move the water, and at every scale, the same quiet trick was waiting. The biggest power plant depended on capacity versus output. The famous seawall wasn't the longest, it was the smartest. And the tunnel was a highway in disguise. Water doesn't care what we call these things. It just keeps pushing and forces us to be honest about what we actually built and what we actually measured. The engineering is staggering, but the discipline underneath it is humility. Build exactly for the worst the water can do, and not a meter less. Here's the test I'll leave you with. Whenever someone says biggest dam, longest wall, deepest tunnel, ask the one question that survives every superlative. Measured how, capacity or output, length or significance. The number almost always picked the measure that let it win. If you want to see what happens when we build down instead of against the water, the deepest places humans have ever worked, that's the next one. It goes a very long way down.